Modern games. Full of flashy graphics, endless tutorials, and enough updates to make your head spin. You know, back in the good old days, games didn't need day one patches or a subscription service just to unlock the full experience. They were built to last, like a well-crafted sword or shield. No microtransactions, no battle passes, just pure gameplay that challenged your brain as much as your thumbs. So let's leave behind the world of soulless blockbusters with bloated budgets that somehow make the games worse. How does that work? And shrink down with us, the Dusty Game Society, to visit an amazing classic game from 2004. I'll tell you more about the DGS at the end of the video, but now it's time to don your green tunic, wield the four sword, and explore the tiny yet epic world of The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance. When I was a little dweeb, I used to fantasize that there was like a hidden world all around us. So some secret kind of place just beyond our reach where real magic existed. And in my mind, there were people there, or maybe like creatures or whatever. And they knew that we were over here in our real world from their hidden world. And then maybe somehow a deserving dweeb would be able to find his way into this hidden world and go on adventures. Isn't that lame of me? Don't answer. I know it's lame. Surely you would never wish for such lame things like I did, right? So with that out of the way, let's dive into the world of the Minish Cap, where being small is kind of a big deal. See what I did there? Don't worry, it gets worse. The Minish Cap stands out in the Zelda franchise because it's not one of the big three that everyone rants about. You know, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Breath of the Wild. This game is like the underrated younger brother that's secretly cooler. It doesn't try to outdo its bigger Zelda siblings with massive worlds or console-defining graphics or crazy new mechanics. Instead, it focuses on tight, classic Zelda gameplay, charming visuals, and doing something that actually feels unique in the Zelda world. The ability for Link to shrink down and visit the world of the Minish. What are the Minish, you ask? Well, why don't you shut up and stop interrupting? I'll get to it when I'm ready. If you've played any of the classic Zelda games, you know the basics of the gameplay. You're running around, slashing stuff with your Zelda game sword, solving puzzles, breaking pots like some kind of pottery-hating maniac like me in real life. But what the Minish Cap does that's unique is introduce this mechanic where you shrink down to the size of a small bug. And when I say small, I mean like really small. Smaller than my chances of ever getting a job and moving out of my mom's basement and meeting a girl who will talk to me. Yeah, that small. The shrinking mechanic makes for some seriously fun puzzles. Like, you'll start a dungeon as regular old Link, and then you'll shrink down and suddenly that mundane puddle that you walked by 5 minutes ago becomes a full-on lake. Or that tiny crack in the wall is a pathway to a whole new area. It's a bit like playing two different games at the same time, and it keeps things fresh and interesting, unlike my YouTube videos. Speaking of which, if you haven't subscribed yet, could I interest you in that? Also, let me just take a second to appreciate the items in this game. You got your standard stuff, boomerang and bombs, all that malarkey, but then you get a bunch of unique stuff. For example, the Gust Jar. This weird little device lets you suck up air and blow it out like some sort of magical leaf blower. You can use it to vacuum up dust or blow enemies off platforms, or use it to launch your lily pad boat in different directions. And there's a few other cool items that do different things showing up for the first time in this game, which is impressive considering how many Zelda games there are. So every Zelda game has a story, right? Even if it's just a flimsy pretext to go out and attack everything that moves with your Zelda game sword. There's always at least a reason that you're out trying to save Zelda or whatever. And here, yeah, you got your classic Zelda scenario. The bad guy shows up, kidnaps a princess, Zelda, obviously, and it's up to Link to save the day. In Minish Cap, we get this new villain named Vaati. Vaati is like Ganon Light. He's not as iconic, but he does have some solid villainous flair. Also, instead of taking over the world with brute force, Vaati's all about using magic and being a sneaky jerk, which I respect. That's how I would take over the world if I was into that sort of thing. This time around, the plot centers around a magic hat that is also kind of a duck, I guess. The hat is Eslo, who was originally a Minish sage and inventor who was transformed into a hat by his former apprentice, Vaati, after Vaati stole a powerful magical artifact that Eslo has created. So this isn't just any old magic hat. The hat talks. Eslo has a personality and he helps you throughout the game. And I know you're thinking, TechDweeb, how can a hat be a compelling sidekick? And I'm here to tell you, I have no idea. It's weird. I actually wouldn't say that he's a compelling sidekick, but he's there and he's somewhat interesting. I mean, Eslo, he has sass, he gives advice, and he helps you solve puzzles by making snarky remarks, disparaging you for your failures and mocking you when you need a hint. I relate to him on a deeply spiritual level because that's sort of how my inner critical monologue sounds. He's a jerk, but a lovable one. And then there's also the whole Minish race. Tiny little creatures that only kids like Link can see. And they add this whimsical layer to the story. It's kind of like a fairy tale version of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but with swords and monsters. Do people today even know Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Is that an old man reference? I don't know. Honestly, I was really into it. Way more than I should have been for a dude my age. But hey, that's why I'm here making Zelda videos, right? Those who know me well know that I am freaking nuts about the pixel art on the Game Boy Advance. And the pixel art in the Minish Cap is so good. This game is freaking beautiful. Every location is colorful and detailed and oozes with that classic Zelda charm. Whether you're in Hyrule Town, the deep woods, or one of the dungeons, there's always some awesome pixel art scenery and characters to gawk at. Plus, the animations are silky smooth, which is a must for action-adventure games. Nothing worse than a choppy sword swing, am I right? And don't get me started on the music. Actually, do get me started because I'm going to talk about it anyway. The soundtrack in the Minish Cap is full of bangers. It's got those classic Zelda tunes, but remixed with new flavor depending on the area that you're in. Makes you feel like you're on a grand adventure, even if you're just sitting in your basement surrounded by granola bar wrappers and HDMI cables, like I am right now as I record this. Here's the big question though. Is the Minish Cap still fun today, or is it just one of those games that's best left in the past? Well, let me answer your question with another question. Do you like fun? If you don't, then no, don't play this or any other video game. Go eat some cornflakes and go bird watching. But if you do like fun, then heck yeah, the Minish Cap is absolutely worth playing. It's got everything that makes Zelda games great. Awesome dungeons, clever puzzles, cool items, genuinely fun mechanics, and a world that's a blast to explore. Plus, the shrinking mechanic is actually super cool. I mean, come on, it's 2024 and I still get a kick out of seeing Link shrink down to the size of a beetle. There's something magical about revisiting games that nail the balance between nostalgia and genuinely great design. This is one of those games that even 20 years later still holds up. I don't think it's my favorite Zelda game of all time, but it's high on the list, and I think it's my favorite 2D Zelda game. I even liked it better than A Link to the Past, believe it or not. And if that makes you angry, then you go ahead and gather a mob and grab your pitchforks, and as you burst down my door, I'm just gonna shrink down and hide in a flower pot. You won't even find me. Any Zelda game is an important piece of gaming history. Let's be real here. But the Minish Cap is a unique page in the history books because this game was developed by Capcom with Nintendo. And that collaboration led to some unique design choices that set it apart from the rest of the series. It's kind of like when your mom helps you with a school project and it turns out way better than if you had done it alone. This game is also important because it marked the last 2D Zelda adventure before the series went full 3D with Twilight Princess and beyond. It's the end of an era, really. If you're a fan of classic top-down Zelda gameplay, you kinda need to play the Minish Cap. It's like the GBA's swan song for 2D Zelda games. Plus, it's just a great reminder of how awesome handheld gaming was back in the day, and still is today, whether you're playing on original hardware, or emulation, or watching a dweeb flapping his hands on YouTube while he talks about it. So there you have it, nerds. The Minish Cap. It's small but mighty, just like my social circle. Speaking of which, with that amazing segue out of the way, let's hear what the rest of the Dusty Game Society dweebs have to say about the Minish Cap, shall we? The Shibushi says it's a great bite-sized Zelda game, simple and bright, but holds true to the Zelda formula. A few gripes about the final boss, which I definitely agree with, but still well worth playing. Clippolipus laments that this game comes from a bygone era and how games today fail to capture this level of love and storytelling. Kami Motu125 says that the Minish Cap is a sweet and fun game. Love that the hat gave you helpful advice like the shrinking mechanic, and it made them want to play the Oracle games for the Game Boy Color again. And I'm 100% with you there. Ripska appreciates that this game departs from the formula, like the mix of the old and new music, had some valid criticism about the NPCs and the side activities, and overall gave it 7 out of 10 mysterious shells. And also there's a dog in this review, so it wins. Alan says this is classic Zelda perfected. Holds up great art, solid dungeon design, one of their all-time favorites. All Our Tech says that the 2D Legend of Zelda games have always been some of their favorite gaming experiences. Doesn't like the ending though, and yeah, I kind of agree with them on that, unfortunately. This is the first Zelda game that AJP has beaten. Well done, buddy. But his son joined him, and he's not even in the Dusty Game Society. Well, AJP, you tell your kid that I'm sending my people to come and collect. Sir Andrew had a ton to say. Lots that they liked, but they hated the Kinstone stuff, which I didn't really talk about in the review because it's pretty optional and I hated it too. They were annoyed about some of the awkward progression parts, which is fair, but ultimately loved the vibrant colors and the modern conveniences of emulation. 6 out of 10 Kinstones. Reaver Rat says that it's a wonderful game, harkening back to A Link to the Past. Liked the pixel art and mechanics, didn't like the collectibles, but still found it fun and enjoyable. 4.5 miniature links out of 5. Dashing Fox had fun and astutely says that this feels like the bridge between the old and new 2D Zelda games. Well said, buddy. Bits and Bytes says that there are more than a few GBA games that look gorgeous, and then you have a few that rise above the rest. This game is the top of what pixel art could do on the GBA. And they always prefer the 2D Zelda games above the 3D ones because it feels like they try harder to be creative with puzzles and stuff. Beowulf 410 found this a pleasant surprise, liked the shrinking mechanic, liked the graphics, had a blast, and gave it 9 Kinstone fusions out of 10. And this is neat. This review here was written by my buddy Mark. I invited him to play this specifically because he does a podcast called All My Best Friends Are Digital with his co-host Caitlin. Mark and Caitlin cover modern games, indie games, and also retro games, and they play a retro game each week and talk about it on their show. So for this week, they did the Minish Cap, and if you listen to the episode, you might hear a little cameo from yours truly when I invited them to play this with us. And I'm not just saying this because I know the host, but I think their podcast is freaking awesome. And if you like my stuff, then you'll like their show because they play great games. They talk a lot about amazing retro games. They're both smart and funny and are truly dweebs of the highest caliber. I'll toss a link to All My Best Friends Are Digital in the doodad below if you want to check it out. I had a great time playing this game with the fine dweebs of the Dusty Game Society this month, as I do every month. Membership in the DGS is a perk that I offer to my patrons. Each month we play an amazing retro game together, picked by yours truly, and we talk about it all month long, like a book club for retro games. And if you'd like to support the important work that I do and also play games with us and make it into the review video at the end of the month, there's a link to my Patreon in the doodad below. And I would like to personally thank all my supporters on Patreon for helping me out. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me keep the lights on and the root beer flowing, and honestly, I couldn't do what I do without your help. So thank you, everyone. I'm genuinely touched by your support. But we're not here to be squishy. We're here to play amazing retro games. So you should play Minish Cap as soon as you finish this video instead of cleaning your room like your mom asked. And stay tuned for the next Dusty Game Society review because this month we're going to be playing a spooky retro game for October. And it's a doozy. A spooky doozy. And that's it from us for today. From all of us at the DGS, stay dusty, my friends.